If you do not know me, I am Abbie, and I am counting it my privilege to get to chat tonight and to get to share something that I feel God has been speaking to me. So I am going to speak around the title of planting, growing and harvesting. And I've tried to make what I wanted to say tonight applicable to circumstances that we may be finding ourselves in now because of the current situation that we are living in. So I wanted to start by reading a verse from Haggai in chapter 1, verse 6. And it says, "You have planted much, but harvested little. You eat, but never have enough. You drink, but never have your fill. You put on clothes, but are not warm. You earn wages, only to put them in a purse with holes in it. This is what the Lord Almighty says. Give careful thought to your ways." So the Lord Almighty is saying, give careful thought to your ways. So this book was written to people who believed in God, but they were serving their own priorities above God. And I think that is something that we are all guilty of at times. Maybe Netflix, maybe going to the gym, or workload, revision, whatever it is, there are many things, and the list goes on of things that we can put before God at times, and that is definitely something that we need to address. So something that struck me when I read this verse is that not only does God understand what we are going through, but He has actually defined what we are going through. As the author of creation, God holds the perfect plan. He knows what we are going to go through before we even go through it. He knows how we are going to feel. And therefore it is so crucial that we remain close to the Father at this time. If you're going through hardship, something that maybe is personal to you that you're finding really difficult, it is so important that we bring that all to God. So, in terms of this, in Hebrews chapter 2, verse 8, referring to Jesus, it says, "Because He Himself suffered when He was tempted, He is able to help those who are being tempted." And that is something that I find really comforting at this time as well. During the times we are living in, we have been forced to make sacrifices, and Jesus' life was full of sacrifices, obviously with the ultimate sacrifice of His life. So maybe you feel that you're making sacrifices at this time. Maybe you've been forced to give up the gym, maybe you've had to give up your staff room and work, maybe you miss the buzz and the connection with people, maybe it's your Pilates class at the leisure centre. Everyone, I'm sure, will have something different. But in this verse we are reminded that Jesus has lived, that Jesus had to make sacrifices. So if you are struggling with something that you have had to give up, if you're finding it really tough, turn to Jesus, turn to the one who has sacrificed everything and knows what we are going through. So back to the verse that I read at the beginning. The people in this verse were unable to acknowledge the things God had given them because they just weren't aware of His provision of their circumstances. So I encourage you to think about God's provision over your entire life, over the past month, over the past week, and you will see that God is faithful, that He is good, that even if things look a little different, God has still given us so much. He's given us His Word, the Holy Spirit. He's given us something to drink. He's given us food. He has given us so much more, and He is faithful. He is not going to change. He is not going to leave us. He is not going to forsake us. So take courage in that. So again, in that verse it said, give careful thought to your ways. Going back to the first part of the verse, it says, you have planted much, but harvested little. I think sometimes as Christians, planting can become our natural response. We can turn up to church on a Sunday because it's become routine. We can read our Bible because we have established a good discipline, a good pattern. We can make it our target to pray at least once a day. We can tithe because we think that's right and that we should do it. We'll maybe ignore the idea of sacrifice, but we will tithe in that way. And there's nothing bad with these things. In fact, these things help us to grow. But in order to reap a harvest, I think there is more required. We need to step out of our comfort zones. We need to go further. We need to pray continually for people and for our world. We need to love people in new ways, even if that is people in your house who maybe feels like you can't get along with them. You've been with them for so long. We have to love them. We have to pray for those in our lives who need prayer. And in Galatians it says, at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. So this is the idea of harvesting. I'm sure at the minute a lot of us have a lot more time on our hands. I know that I do. So I encourage you to use this time wisely, to chase after God more than you have before. Even if you're not at church, even if you're not seeing some of your friends, take this time as personal time to chase after God, to seek his voice, to see what he is saying to you, to listen to him, to rest in his presence. Without a doubt, what we are going through at the minute is unknown, it is fearful, it is difficult. But I also think that an element of this is really, really beautiful. I think it is amazing that we have been given this time, that we can make the decision that we are going to use this time wisely, that we are going to seek God, that we are going to learn what it looks like to be fully dependent on him, that we can seek his will, that we can listen to his voice, that we can rest in his presence. I think it is really exciting that we have this opportunity to invest more than we maybe would have before because of other commitments, and I'm really excited to see what will happen from that. And finally then, as it says in Galatians, at the proper time we will reap a harvest. God's timing is perfect, his plan is perfect, and at the proper time that will happen. So maybe that will be during this period of lockdown that you will reap your harvest. Maybe it will be in a month, in a year, maybe it'll be later down the line, from the good things that you have planted now. But that is really exciting that we have that mindset, that we can look forward to the goal. So I encourage you to give careful thought to your ways. You have lots of time to do it, so I encourage you to do that. I also hope that you remember that Jesus sacrificed his life for us. He understands what we are going through. He has defined what we are going through, so we can turn to him for help. And finally, I encourage you to plant good things during this time. Don't let this time go to waste. Don't look back and think, oh, I could have done more. I could have grown in intimacy with the Father. And also, finally, here is a quote that I thought I would leave you with. Living wisely is difficult because often the choice is not between the bad and the good, but the choice is between the good and the best.